Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Correct Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2002 sports comedy drama titled Bend It Like Beckham. Of course, unless you were born in the Gen X or the Millennial era, if you don't know who David Beckham is, he was one of the biggest stars in the field of professional soccer. He received a lot of awards, trophies, accolades in British soccer, or as they call, well, everywhere else in the world, it's called football, except for Canada and the United States. We call it soccer. But anyhow, let's not argue. Anyhow, yes, of course, David Beckham, not only was a big star in both his country and the United States, he also was famous for marrying a member of the Spice Girls. We're talking about Victoria Adams, better known as the rich but trendy social butterfly, better known as Posh Spice. And believe it or not, in this movie, there is some Spice Girl references, although not really represented in a very positive light, but we will get more into that. The runtime of this movie is 1 hour and 52 minutes. It is directed by Gurinder Chada. This is definitely a pet project for Miss Gurinder Chada. The script was written by Gurinder Chada, Paul Medea Burgess, and Gulshdit Bindra. It is produced by Gurinder Chada and Deepak Niari. The story was done by Gurinder Chada. It was composed by Craig Prewis, the cinematography by Young Lind, and it was edited by Justin Krish. And it starred Parminder Nagra, Keira Knightley, Archie Panjabi, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Shaznay Lewis, Anupan Kher, Shaheen Khan, Frank Harper, Juliet Stevenson, Amit Chana, Govinder Gahir, Ash Varez, Pooja Shah, Priya Kalidas, Trey Farley, Zora Segal, Siraj Chowdhury, Paveen Dirk, Emma Daly, Nina Wadia, Ace Bahati, Gary Lineker, Alan Henson, and John Barnes. Plus, there was also a cameo by soccer legend David Beckham and Victoria Adams Beckham. Although I think they actually, when I looked at the trivia, I believe David Beckham and Victoria Beckham were actually imposters. They weren't the real David Beckham and Posh Spice. I didn't know. I thought they actually were getting paid a lot of money just to have 1 minute of camera time. But I guess maybe they were just too good to even have a moment like that. Anyhow, let's get on with the movie. Okay, so Bend It Like Beckham is filled with a plethora of subplots going for it. Yes, I guess if there was a weakness to the story, it was because they had so many ideas and they tried to cram everything into 1 hour and 52 minutes long. Yeah. That's probably where the biggest weakness is, but it doesn't take anything away from the enjoyment. So we have events happening here and there. We have a big Hindu wedding is taking place, or a Sikh wedding, I think it is. A little bit different from a Hindu wedding. Conflicts that relate to cultural differences, and a young lady trying to free herself from her parents' desires and trying to draw a path for herself. Even if it means doing underhanded tactics that might border on rebel, albeit not in bad intentions, but more or less just for her own purposes, her own dreams, and her own desires. And even if it does cost a little bit of negative backlash and chagrin from her family and her extended family, which also includes her ultra conservative in laws, who seem to take a very, very negative, very, very dim light on her own family, trying to break away from traditional values that might have been prominent in India, but maybe not so by English traditions. There is a little bit of some race issues, but it's not like everything about it has to do with race. There is some levels of racism, but this is a sports comedy drama. There's comedy, there's drama, there is some social commentary, but it's not like just shoved down our throats every 5 fucking minutes. So they really don't try to further emphasize on racial political identity issues. Sure, some of the jokes and some of the humor might be a bit out of date. It might have been okay in 2002, but may not sit very well for 2024 standards. I will further elaborate on that as well. But in the meantime, let's talk about the story here. So we got Parminder Nagra stars as Jess, who lives in Great Britain in a Sikh family. She comes off as the typical average teenager, which, of course, the penchant to rebel. Well, maybe she's probably not like she's a late teen. She's probably about maybe I would say roughly about maybe 17, possibly maybe even 18 years old. And yes, like a typical teenager, they will rebel against their parents' wishes and desires. We've all done that before. Nothing new. Her rebellious ways were not met with bad intentions like delinquency or malice or anything that would define malevolence. It's just, and she's not like hanging out with bad people. She's just defying the expected standards from her very conservative traditionalist parents who live by old school Indian traditions like wearing saris, learning to cook, and attending Ivy League. I don't believe Sikhs believe in fixed or arranged marriages. I think that's Hindus. Sikhs, they usually marry out of love, but they still also have to abide by traditional protocols that cannot be either broken nor violated. Her ambition, but okay, so what is Jess's gripe? Like I said, it's nothing bad. All she wants to do is pursue a life in the field of sports, not minding getting her fingers or her body dirty, getting involved in a contact sport like soccer/slash football. She wants to become a major star in the soccer field, football. And she wants to be as good as her idol, David Beckham. Of course, I guess the reason why they threw David Beckham in was because, oh, he was just a random name. It's just like, when you think of a random name from a certain era of music. I mean, what's the first name you think about when you think about the 40s? Frank Sinatra. The 50s. What's the first name that comes up? Elvis. Then in the 60s, the Beatles. I don't know who was the cultural icon in the 70s because I don't think there was really any who stood out. The 80s, it was all about Michael Jackson. The 90s, Mariah Carey. The 2000s, Britney Spears. The 2010s, Katy Perry. And now that we're in the 2020s, it's all about the Swift. It's all about the Swiftiness that life has took its turn to. Every headline is all about Taylor Swift. Sure, she was prominent also in the 2010s, but the 2020s is where it's truly her year, and it's all about Swiftiness. I mean, hey, hockey was just like that too. The 50s, Rocket Richard. The 80s, Wayne Gretzky. Today, it's all about Sidney Crosby. It's, not much difference. I mean, you take any kind of anybody in sports, in media, politics. Everybody seems to pine over, as much as I hate to bring his name up, but it's true. It's something that we just can't escape from. The Don himself. But but still, I'm not trying to bring politics into it. It's just name salad. But instead of taking a bunch of names, we're just gonna pick the cherry off the top. There's a whole bunch of names they could have mentioned, but none of them shine. No star really shone brighter in the field of soccer than David Beckham. And though her parents were lenient towards her aspirations when she was a young girl, they just want her to give up those dreams and settle for a traditional Indian life, which means getting married, having a lot of kids, learning to cook, wearing a sari, and graduating from Ivy League. Just as her dreams are about to be crushed, Jess eventually gets invited to audition to a semi pro all girls soccer team. I'm just going to say soccer because where I come from, it's soccer. Yeah, there's a soccer born every minute. Okay, sorry about that. I had to throw a joke in, just try to lighten the mood. So, when a young soccer hopeful named Juliet, or as she likes to be referred to as Jules, played by Keira Knightley, who has seen Jess play before, recommends her to be coached by 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 Joe, played by Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, who believes that Jess has a lot of potential. Now, Joe is also kind of a flawed character too, coming from the fact that his father was abusive, maybe not in the physical sense, but more in the verbal sense, as he always wanted to try to push him to his fullest potential. And when he got injured, he tried to put it back into the game, only to get himself even more injured, costing his career. And was, of course, worried that he brought shame to his father's legacy, which is why he's been sort of reduced to coaching. And also because Jess also has a scar on her leg from a cooking incident, Joe also shows his battle wound to Jess. But since Jess has been restricted by her ambitions, she can only resort to one thing only: to lie and to sneak out of the house just to keep the whole situation esoteric. Yes. She doesn't really intend to be sneaky about it, but since her parents don't really approve of her ambitions and also doesn't want to ruin her older sister Pinky's wedding, yeah, why do these characters all seem to not want to go by their real names? I mean, why are they called Jess and Jules and Pinky? I mean, they're not the only ones. There's other ones too. But why do they have to use the nicknames? I mean, I'm not stopping them. I mean, it's their decision. If they want to be called that, that's fine. I guess since Jasminder is probably just too long to say, or very few people know how to pronounce it. Hey, just call me Jess. There, it's simple, it's casual, and that's fine. Juliet thinks maybe the name Juliet sounds too formal, so just call me Jules. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Apparently, also, Jess and Jules also become best friends, besties, and also that also is a bit problematic. Not in the race terms, but in more terms of misunderstanding, miscommunication, which I will further elaborate a bit. Well, okay, apparently because they spend a lot of time together, like a lot of typical teenage girls. But even in 2002 standards, people will sometimes often mistake their closeness and their bonding as something more than just beyond platonic. They actually are led to believe to be, well, they are led to believe to be lesbians. Although that is totally opposite, totally not true at all. But apparently there was this whole misconception, even back in 2002, where there was always this belief that female athletes are lesbians, and that also does not stick well to the conservative lifestyle of not just Jess's family, but even Jules's family, particularly not really their fathers, even though Jess's father at first didn't approve of her chasing her dreams of becoming a professional soccer player, but eventually does soften up and was like, at the wedding, he just like tells her, go. If I'll make you feel happy, go. Why should I just deprive of your goals and ambitions? And Jules' father is also more than supportive of her. It's the mothers that in this movie that seem to come across not necessarily in the realm of villainy. I'm not here to paint them off as villains or evil or even antagonistics. They just come from a different times where being prim and prim and pris, I should say, is the way to attract guys. Not rough and tumble stuff like playing soccer. Put on some stilettos instead of some cleats. That's what her mother's frame of mind is to attract guys. For for Jess's mother, wear a sari and cook some traditional Indian comestibles. Will certainly will certainly will certainly cement your position in the film in the realms of getting the right guy or attracting guys better. I mean, a lot of them too also have to kind of go through many other teen angst, including a male friend of theirs who goes by the name of Tony. Yeah, he's also involved in a subplot too. He doesn't know how to tell his conservative parents too. He too is also a Middle Eastern Asian, possibly maybe a Sikh. I don't know, just like Jess. And he's also stuck in a conflict too, where he has to secretively, or he's just I where I think he kind of like falls in the category of what you would call identity shaming, self-inflicted identity shaming. Apparently, he and Jess and possibly maybe even Jules, I don't remember, are the only ones who know that he's hiding a secret that he doesn't want his parents to know. He's gay. Now I know people are thinking, okay, he's gay. No big fucking deal, right? Well, in Sikh and Hindu and possibly maybe even Muslim traditions, being gay in the Middle East Asian families, even still to this day, is very, very taboo. I don't know why it has to be that way, but unfortunately, it is. I don't like it, and I'm sorry that these things happen, but yeah. A lot of dark secrets are in this movie. Some of them are revealed, some of them still remain concealed. But it's just like the lives of becoming a teenager, of being a teenager. You live with deep, dark secrets that you sometimes don't want to tell your parents because you're afraid of retribution and also afraid of the repercussions that could come of it. These are some pretty scary times. That's was like that back then, and even probably even still to this day. So while Bend and Like Beckham succeeds in keeping the scenes and situations light and comical, like I mentioned, there are a few serious scenes that prevent it from being a full blown comedy. Sure, there's a lot of one liners and a lot of jokes and sardonic humor, especially evolving around traditional conservative families and more liberal minded adolescents. They're living in the now, their parents are still living in the then. And some subjects involving culture clashing in which traditional standards are being put to the test against a more modern way of thinking. And even though race and gender issues, like I mentioned before, do come up at times, it's not the central theme. and never tends to get overly political or preachy and keeps the flow to a lightweight approach, which I actually do find very, very admirable. Of course, today, if Bend It Like Beckham was out by 2024, these issues would be more featured prominently. But in this movie, we don't get that kind of bullshit. We do live in different times, don't we? Let's move on. Even though Jess is rebelling against her family's restrictions, like I said, she's not doing it out of malice, but rather something she's just very passionate about. And she's been passionate about this since she was a young girl playing soccer with the other boys in the park and seemed just organically good at the sport. She never probably ever had to read some kind of guidance. She just knew how to play offensively and defensively and just seemed to know the arts and the strategies without really ever having to try. Oh, of course, as time goes on, you get better as you go along, but, hey. I mean, there are some race issues, like when and her all girl pro team go to Germany and the rival team, one of the members does refer to her with the racial P word that rhymes with Mackie, which is, of course, a deep rooted racial term given towards Middle Eastern Asians. And she does bring the race scheme into it, but not too excessively. Even her coach Joe, who had no choice but to penalize her and keep her benched, said to her like, "Hey, I faced racial prejudices too, being the fact that I'm Irish." Now I know people are thinking, "Well, hey, British, Irish, in the end, you're all white." But no, if you really want to go into some deep rooted history, the British and had often ostracized with the Irish. I mean, there was always a great conflict between the British and the Irish, just as much so as Catholics and Protestants, Jews and Muslims, Hindus and Sikhs. There has always been this great divinity involving race and religious clashes. As much as I don't, as much as these things should not be condoned, they happen. And I can't think of any other explanations simply because. No other reason or explanation, it's simply just because. I just can't come up with a better answer, I'm afraid. But yeah, there is that talk about. And also Jess also seems to have a bit of an attraction towards Joe. And even that could be a bit problematic towards her conservative family. I mean, she was even told that she's probably not gonna likely get into any kind of relationship unless it's with another Sikh. Because I guess they still kind of prefer to marry some of their own kind. While she does find Joe to be quite attractive to her, and he feels the same way too. And while I don't have a mindset thinking that that's necessarily a bad thing, maybe I'm being a little bit ageist, but I don't know the exact age of Jess. Obviously, Joe might be somewhat older than her, like maybe probably in his mid to late 20s. And Jess kind of comes across as being probably 17, 18 years, 17 years old. If she's 17, she's still kind of a minor. Jules is also possibly a minor too. There's a lot of clashes that seem to go on with the family dynamics, and even just old school versus new school, and just the struggles, the trials and tribulations of trying to bring old ideas and new ideas together so that one could live in peace and harmony. On the one hand, yes, it's mandatory to respect your parents, even if their ideas might be archaic at best. But still, to the parents, you have to let your kids go with the flow and live in the modern times. All right, you guys are all from a bygone era, and I think the best thing to do is simply just to move forward. And like I said before, as much as I have great admiration for this movie, there is quite a bit of subplots that most runs they flow nicely with the narrative. We see the romantic triangle where Jess seems to be smitten over Joe. However, Juliet seems to share the same feelings as well, which gives some tension between the two friends, even though they are mistaken for being lesbians because of the fact that Jules kind of has a bit of a tomboyish look and seems to have short cropped hair and seems to not dress girly girly. And I know I said I was going to get to that in a bit, but maybe I might be, maybe I don't know. There's a lot of miscommunication. Let's just put it that way. If I don't get there. However, and like I mentioned before, Jess has a close friend. His name is Tony, played by Amit Chana, who is like a male friend to Jess. And at first, you probably might think that maybe he might be attracted to her, but he also has a secret confession that he can't tell his mother for the fear of damaging their relationship. Then we have Jess questioning herself if she's really that good enough to win the semi pro championship for her team, which would qualify her to compete in the United States to play for a real professional team that pays. Also, she was supposed to enroll at UCLA, where the championship game is to be played. Now the problem is that her sister's wedding is also on that same day. Oh boy, what a crescendo! This kind of puts her in a precarious type position. So then we get that all important game complex, which will determine whether she'll get in or not. While at the same time, she doesn't want to put a dent to her already fractured reputation that her parents have had, being the fact that Jess is not going by traditional ways, and even Pinky herself is still secretly hiding her deep secrets with her ex boyfriend while also getting married in just a matter of moments. Like I said, a lot of stuff is crammed in. Some of it work, a lot of it works effectively. Sure, the Tony coming out of the closet thing could have been more further elaborate, but since this is the sports movie, this is the meat and potatoes that we're seeing. The Tony situation is at best maybe the soup or the appetizer. And then, of course, the climax is the dessert. But still, you know, there's a lot of things that could have been handled maybe a little bit better, but most of it is effective. I mean, we have characters that we are very deeply engaged with. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try and finish off as much as I can. I have a lot to talk about, but let's go on over here. The cast in this movie was wonderful overall, especially the casting of Keira Knightley and Parminder Nagra, who each have great chemistry when they're on together. I really, really dig that. This is Keira Knightley pre Captain Elizabeth Swann in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Of course, she went on to greater heights. I'm not sure about Parminder Nagra, but if she did continue to pursue her acting career, I think she also too had a bright future. But if she's not in the acting business and pursued another job or another career, I wish her the best. I wish I kind of knew more about her. They both really, really, really nailed it. They're both very likable and seem to act more closer to sisters than teammates, even though their parents think they're even more closer than even just sisters. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers shows a great deal of likability to his role. Sure, there are times where he might be tough with his coaching techniques, but hey, he's a coach. He's got to dish out the tough love. Like I say, it's when they ignore you is when you have to worry most. But he seems fair off the field and plays off like a friend to the team, especially with Jess and Jules. Anupan Kher is wonderful as Jess's father, whose role is self-conflicted because he is much invested in traditional standards for Indian women, but he still doesn't want to stand in the way of Jess's passion to play soccer. And though her role may sound a bit like a red herring and may not feel like it's part of the narrative, I still will give credit to Juliet Stevenson, who plays Jules' mother. She may come across as a bit of an out of place caricature, feeling that her daughter might be a lesbian because of her love of sports and her closeness with Jess. Even sometimes, even throwing in that cheeky Spice Girls mention of Sporty Spice being one who was not able to get the husband, even though it was never ever any any research. I mean, I've done my research, and there's never been any implications about Sporty Spice being a lesbian. She's actually has had many dates in the past, but has never really fully settled. And of the Spice Girls, she's actually the last member to actually ever have kids. Hey, Scary Spice has about like 9 or 10 of them. Some of them are illegitimate, like the ones she did with Eddie Murphy. But we're not going to go into any like Spice Girls love relationships here. But yeah, they had to throw that bone in. And like I said before, I don't pass her off as a villain, but just a person who doesn't understand the times. Which might make her ignorant, but not evil. But it's her ignorance that makes her characters so unique and believable. Those who grew up in different times are not always up to date on modern ways of thinking, and in some ways that makes her actually all the more real. So, though Bend It Like Beckham delivers a feel good message about chasing your dreams and not letting anyone or anything get in your way, it does so by refraining from becoming preachy or ham fisted in its integrity. It's light in comedy and hands off to director Gurinder Chada, who shows no apologies for delivering her film of this caliber. Sure, it becomes centered towards what every sports movie and every teen comedy fan is expecting, with all the important happy endings that might be a bit cliched. It's still an enjoyable, sugary, saturated cinematic triumph that will likely win the approval of its fan base. So if you're into sports movies, or you're into David Beckham, or if you're really into soccer or football, well, you don't get that much into it because it's more of a drama than anything, but it's still a very effective piece of storytelling. So if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give Bend It Like Beckham from 2002 an 8 out of 10. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember the three simple rules: be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I'll be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.